Our first genre stop is historical fiction. The Animals at Lockwood Manor. 30-year-old Hetty Cartwright is tasked with the evacuation and safekeeping of the Natural History Museum's collection of mammals. Once she and her exhibits arrive at Lockwood Manor, however, where they are to stay for the duration of the war, Hetty soon realizes that she's taken on more than she's bargained for. Protecting her charges from Lord Lockwood and resentful servants is work enough. But when some of the animals go missing, and worse, Hetty began to suspect someone or something is stalking her through the darkened corridors of the house. The second book, Blame the Dead. The nurses of the U.S. Army Field Hospital's mobile units that operate just behind battle lines contend with the hot, the dirt, the short-handed staffs, the threat of the German counterattack, and the ever-present flood of horribly wounded GIs. At the 11th Field Hospital near Palermo, Sicily, in the bloody summer of 1943, nurses also live with the threat of a violent assault by one of their own, at least until someone shoots Dr. Miles Stephenson in the head. The third book in the historical fiction, Mountain Sing. Mountain Sings tells a multi-generational tale of the Tran family, set against the backdrop of the Vietnam War. Tran Dulan, who was born in 1920, was forced to flee her family farm with her 6 children during the land reform as the communist government rose in the north. Years later, in Hanoi, her granddaughter comes of age as her parents and uncles head off down to Ho Chi Minh Trail to fight in a conflict that tore not just her beloved country, but her family apart. And the last one in historical fiction, The Yellow Bird Sings. As Nazi soldiers round up the Jews in their town, Rosa and her 5-year-old daughter, Shara, flee, seeking shelter in a neighbor's barn. Hidden in the hayloft day and night, Shara struggles to stay still and quiet as music pulses through her and the farmyard outside beckons. To soothe her daughter, and pass the time, Rosa tells a story about a girl in an enchanted garden. The girl is forbidden from making a sound, so the yellow bird sings. He sings whatever the girl composes in her head, high-pitched trills of the piccolo, low-throated growls of the contrabassum. Music helps flowers bloom. In this make-believe world, Rosa can shield Shara from the horrors that surround them. But the day comes when their haven is no longer safe, and Rosa must make an impossible choice, whether to keep Shara by her side or give her a chance to survive apart. Our next stop in the genres is magical and spellbinding. First book, The Fortress. Jonathan Bridge's arrival at the Fortress, a society run and populated by women, begins with the recitation of the conditions of his stay. He is forbidden to ask questions, to raise his hand in anger, and to refuse sex. Jonathan has offered himself as a supplicant in the fortress after his pregnant wife Adelia discovers the ugly sexual violence pervading in his top-tier firm. She has agreed to continue their fractured relationship on the condition he enter the fortress for 1 year. Jonathan is utterly unprepared for what will happen to him over the course of the year, not only to his body but his mind and his heart. The next one, The Glass Hotel. Vincent is a bartender at the Hotel Coletti, a 5-star glass and cedar palace on an island in British Columbia. Jonathan works in finance and owns the hotel. When he passes Vincent his card with the tip, it's the beginning of their life together. That same day, Vincent's half-brother Paul scrawls a note on the window wall of the hotel. Why don't you swallow broken glass? Leon, a shipping executive for the company called Neptune Arminides, sees the note from the hotel bar and is shaken to his core. 13 years later, Vincent mysteriously disappears from the deck of the Neptune. And the last one in this series, The Henna Artist. Lashima has spent years carving out a life for herself as a henna artist after fleeing her abusive husband in a backward rural village for the Roshana capital. Well-versed in apothecary and the miraculous properties of herbs, her services and the effects which are far more than just in her community. a highly sought after the upper caste woman, and success brings her within inches from her and her country's ultimate goal, total independence. That is, until the past she has desperately tried to run from comes knocking at her door. Our third genre is mystery. First book, Gone by Midnight. On the 5th floor of the Whitecaps Hotel, 4 young boys are left alone while their parents dine downstairs. But when one of the parents checks on the children at midnight, they discover one of them is missing. The boys swear they stayed in their room. CCTV confirms that none of them left the building. No trace of the child is found. Now the hunt is on to find him before it's too late, and before the search for a boy becomes a search for a body. The second one, The King's Justice. London, December 1942. As the Russian army repels German forces from Stalingrad, Maggie Hope, secret agent and spy, takes a break from the Special Operations Executive Division to defuse bombs in London. But Maggie herself is like an explosion waiting to happen. Shaken by a recent case, she finds herself living more dangerously, taking more risks than usual, smoking again, drinking gin, and riding a motorcycle. And the last thing she wants is to get entangled in another crime. But when she's called upon to look into a stolen Stradivarius, one of the finest violins ever made, Maggie finds the case too alluring to resist. The third, Mrs. Moore Goes Missing. Cockrell, 1893. 38-year-old Sophia has assured her husband's rise through the ranks to university professor and is now looking for something to fill her long days at home. To stave off the boredom and improve her social standing, she decides to organize a charity raffle. To recruit the requisite patronage of elderly acrostic ladies, she visits Hergel House, a retirement home run by nuns. When 2 of the residents are found dead, Sophia discovers by chance that her real talents lie in solving crimes. Our fourth set of books, thought-provoking. First one, The Body Double. A strange man discovers our nameless narrator selling popcorn at a small-town movie theater and offers her an odd and lucrative position. She will forget her job, her acquaintances, and even her name and move to Los Angeles, where she will become the body double of the famous and troubled celebrity Rosanna Feld. A nervous breakdown has forced Rosanna out of the public eye, and she needs a lookalike to take her place in the tabloid media circus of Hollywood. But as she makes her public debut as Rosanna, dining at elegant restaurants, shopping at boutiques, and finally risking a dinner party with Rosanna's true inner circle, alarming questions began to arise. What really caused Rosanna's mental collapse? Will she ever return? And is Max truly her ally or something more sinister? Our next one, My Dark Vanessa. 2000. Bright, ambitious, yearning for adulthood, 15-year-old Vanessa Y becomes entangled in an affair with Jacob Strain, her magnetic 42-year-old English teacher. The year, 2017. Strain has been accused of sexual abuse by a former student who reaches out to Vanessa, and now Vanessa suddenly finds herself facing an impossible choice. Remain silent, firm in her belief that her teenage self-willing engaged in this relationship, or redefine herself in the events of her past. Our last book, Darling Rose. For the first 18 years of her life, Rose Gold Watts believed she was seriously ill. She was allergic to everything and used a wheelchair and practically lived at the hospital. Neighbors did all they could, holding fundraisers and offering shoulders to cry on, but no matter how many doctors tested surgery, no one could figure out what was wrong with Rose Gold. Turns out her mom, Patty Watts, was just really a good liar. After serving 5 years in prison, Patty gets out with nowhere to go and begs her daughter to take her in. The entire community is shocked when Rose Gold says yes. But Rose Gold knows her mother. Patty Watts always settles the score. Unfortunately for Patty, Rose Gold is no longer her weak little darling, and she waited such a long time for her mother to come home. Our next genre is fantasy. We have one book, Crescent City. Bryce Quinlan had the perfect life, working hard all day and partying all night, until a demon murdered her closest friends, leaving her guilt-ridden, wounded, and alone. When the accused is behind bars but the crime set up again, Bryce finds herself at the heart of the investigation. She'll do whatever it takes to avenge their deaths. As Bryce and Hunt dig deep into Crescent City's underbelly, they discover a dark power that threatens everything and everyone they hold dear, and they find in each other a blazing passion, one that could set them both free, if only they let it. Our next genre is nonfiction. Get out of your own way. When Rachel Hollis began writing the #1 New York bestseller Girl, Wash Your Face, her husband Dave bristled at her transparency about her self-deceptions. Then he had a revelation. Women aren't the only ones who believe lies. Both women and men buy into a host of lies that keep them from reaching their potential, often against a backdrop of ingrained ideas about how they should or shouldn't act, how they should or shouldn't reach for help, or how they should show up for life. Offering encouragement, challenge, and 100 moments to laugh at himself, Dave points the way for others to drop bogus ideas and finally start living the best version of their lives too. High Risk. Dr. Kowalski in High Risk, her timely and unflinching account of working in the maternal fetal medicine, the branch of medicine that concerns high-risk pregnancies, whether offering insight into the rise in home births, the alarming rise in Americans' maternal mortality rate, or the history of involuntary sterilization. The doctor offers a window into all of that pregnancy, labor, birth can entail, birth and joy, but also challenge and loss, illustrating the complexity of the reproductive life and the systems that surround it. And our last book, In Our Prime. In Our Prime takes on the cosmetic industry for its expensive products and the anti-aging message. Big pharmaceutical companies for its images of docile grannies and puttering gardeners, and Hollywood and TV for seeing females over 50 as has-beens. She exposes the financial insecurity many face even as conservatives continue their attack on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and calls on every woman of every age to unite to combat gendered ageism and to secure our country's financial security. Our last genre is memoirs. First book, I Want You to Know We're Still Here. Esther grew up in a home where the past was too terrible to speak of. The child of parents who were each the sole survivors of their respective families. For Esther, the Holocaust loomed in the backdrop of daily life, felt but never discussed. The result was a childhood marked by painful silences and continued tragedy, even as she built a successful career, married, and raised 3 children. Esther always felt herself searching. Next book, Lady in Waiting. Anne has been at the center of the royal circle from childhood, when she met and befriended the future Queen Elizabeth II and her sister, Princess Margaret. Though the firstborn child of the 5th Earl of Lancaster, who controlled one of the largest estates in England, as a daughter she was deemed the greatest disappointment, and unable to inherit. Since then she has needed all her relevancy to survive the vipers of court life and her sense of humor intact. Our third book, Rust. In Rust, Elise brings the reader inside the belly of the mill in the middle of the American upbringing that brought her there in the first place. She takes a long and intimate look at the Rust Belt childhood and the struggles to reconcile her desire to leave without turning her back on the people she came to love. People she sees as the unsung backbone of the nation. And the last one, Spirit Run. Running through the mountains, desert cities, through the Mexican territory his parents left behind. Alvarez forges a new relationship with the land and with the act of running, carrying with him the knowledge of his parents' migration and against all odds in a society that exploits his body and rejects his spirit, and the dream of the liberated future.